We are now at the end of Pisces season. This is the last video. I wanted to thank each and every one of you for coming with me on this strange and curious little journey that hopefully illuminated and revealed to you something about yourself that you can now integrate into your consciousness, into your heart, into the love that you already are. And it is really beautiful that we get to end Pisces season, the sun in Pisces season, with this last video when the moon is transiting the sign of Libra. Libra is a sign that is often associated with harmony, right? Its symbol is the weighing scales. And if you've ever had a weighing scale that was broken, nothing can happen, right? Like the measurement is off. It's the item is useless, and obviously you can't use it for anything. And so the work of Libra is actually the mechanics of the weights and the weight scale that are able to then do this little dance, right? When you put weights on one side and it finds a place of harmonic balance, depending on what you put on one side. The interesting thing with Libra energy is it is an air sign, but it is very closely tied into our intimate relationships. And here's the fun part. Intimate relationships could be, our lovers and our close family. But one of the ways I learned about my own truth with intimate relationships is the other side of Libra, which is actually how we relate to our enemies, because they are also our intimates. Right? And we may not actively have enemies, but the people in our lives that are those oppositional characters, it may not feel intimate, but emotionally and energetically, there is an intimacy that we exchange with the people we heavily dislike or the people that massively oppose us, because they're often in our minds, in our psyche, in our emotions, and our actions are often related to what they might say and they might do. And so this is a sense of intimacy that isn't romantic as much as it is how closely their energies and their lives relate to us. And so Libra as an energy is our lovers and our intimate partnerships and also our enemies. And this is also coming back to how all of that is balanced in the scales of our lives. The other thing with Libra that's, fairly obvious is that it's part of the harmony is in coming to balance what seems opposite. Now, I mentioned this in the previous video when I was talking about Virgo, form, and Pisces, formlessness. These two signs are they are pole opposites in the wheel of the zodiac. The sign that is opposite to Libra is Aries. Aries is the I am, the fire, the initiator, the ignition of something. Libra is about the we. Anything Libra energy enacts is about or includes others. And so here we can look at, I want this. If you and I are going on a trip together and I want this and you want something else, we can easily see that becomes oppositional. Right? We have an opposite desire, or we perhaps have opposite nature, and that is now coming to clash. The moon in Libra specifically, which is, again, the moon is very wise around relationships. The transit that is the moon in Libra asks us, or rather reminds us, that in order for the wheel of the zodiac to keep turning, you actually need opposites. Right? You need a spoke that goes this way and then the oppositional spoke that goes this way. If one of these spokes is broken, you're not going to have a wheel that turns smoothly. You're not going to have a wheel that goes anywhere or runs anything in your life. And so that is also part of the harmony of Libra energy. When we learn astrology, it's very common when one is learning astrology to look at, celebrities and things like that. One of the really beautiful ones, and I don't have a lot of Libra in my chart. I mean, I have it, we all do, but I don't have planets. I don't have a lot of planets or asteroids or anything in it. So this one was a little bit hard for me to learn, but ironically, I actually had to look at other Libras, the charts of people who had strong Libra energy in that relationship to other, to learn it for myself. And so one of the famous people who has very strong Libra is Mahatma Gandhi. Now, Mahatma Gandhi has the sun and what is called his ascendant in Libra. And I'm not going to get into the zodiac, the energy of the ascendant, but these are two very much the aspect of the personality, who the person is and how they are perceived in the world. And so Mahatma Gandhi is famous for satyagraha. And satyagraha literally means to stand and anchor yourself steadfastly in truth, right? Satya is truth. Now, politically, because he was alive in the time of the British occupation of India in the colonial times, this became, so the concept of satyagraha is to stand and anchor in your truth, whatever that truth may be. For this particular man in that particular time during the occupation, and like in the freedom fighting movement, satyagraha became a political movement about non-violent, non-aggressive action to overthrow, with the purpose to overthrow the colonial rule and have independence, right? And this is actually, I think, the beauty of Libra, and that's why I brought up the whole, intimate with, partners and lovers, but also intimate with enemies, because who you are with what you don't, how you relate to the aspects of life that you don't like, colonizers, oppressors, that reveals a massive part of who you are. And so the ability of how the Libra energy, and so this part is not learned, this is just me. What I'm now sharing is not the truth about Mahatma Gandhi, it's just how I understand Libra energies moving through him. And so how I understand it is that tension that we have of opposites. I am here and my enemy is here and attacking me. When we are in fight, and this is not to say that we should never fight and never be in rebellion or active war, that maybe there's a time and place for that. But through the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, the energy of Libra anchors in to the center of that scale, right? The center of the scale that holds the two scales of Libra, where we apply weights, that center has to be anchored in truth. And then and once that happens, then we can weigh and then we can flow with what is actually happening in reality. And so my sense of this is when we are fighting against something, this is an oppressor, this is like a bad thing, maybe they're whatever, I'm just going to say an evil person or an enemy, right? Like whatever that energy or person is. And we are here and we are fighting and they're pushing. That can happen. It takes a lot of effort and energy on both parts. But when you're fighting against something, you actually have to, you are intimately engaging with this energy, even if you hate it. Simply by nature of how energy is, when you are engaging in something, in this case, an act of war, you are agreeing to play the game of the oppressor, which is where the medicine of satyagraha is so powerful, especially in that time, right? When like so much of the world was colonized. Because here, the very notion is, and he didn't stop other people from fighting, but as I understand it, his thing was simply, well, if I push too much against it, then this also becomes true. So you know what? I'm not going to do that. And instead, I will have this movement where people gather and come together and we together stand in nonviolent, non-aggressive political movement. So one of the things that he did, which is probably my favorite thing, I'm sure there were many, but there was this process very common in that time that the colonial power would take a lot of raw resources from the colonies, so in the case of India, cotton, for example, ship it to the UK, make whatever dresses, fabrics, clothing, bring it back to the colonized country, and then sell it for like 10 times the profit, which obviously made people in the colony very poor because their natural resource was stripped and now they can't afford clothing. And so one of the things that Mahatma Gandhi started was the home industry, the home artisan. And he is often portrayed in imagery. He's sitting by a spinning wheel. It's because he actually spun. He spun cotton into fabric. What is called khaki is the traditional linen cotton fabric that comes from India. And so he would make his own clothes, right? And this is sort of the energy around when we, each and every one of us, may feel disempowered in some aspect of life. For in my case, I was, my awakening journey was around being disempowered with health. And so when I went into myself, I then had to learn the skills to figure out what health is for me, including food, including herbs, including physical health, right? And that act of taking something from an outside power and pulling it back into ourselves, this is an act of empowerment that is different than going and shooting someone and bombing someone. And again, that may have its rightful place, but it is not a permanent place. What is a more permanent place is the ability for us to stand in balance, in anchoredness in our truths, where we take full responsibility for the polarity that we experience. No one likes being colonized. Mahatma Gandhi didn't like it like as much as any other person who was. But the beauty here is that through the process of satyagraha, through the process of anchoring in his own truth, he likely realized that he wasn't like a gunfighter person. His truth was nonviolent action. And what comes of this? What can we do economically? What can we do culturally? What can we do to empower women? What can we do to empower artisans and trade? And that was his jam. That was his jam because that was actually an aspect of his truth. Satyagraha for a different type of freedom fighter may look like sword fighting or gunfighting. But again, the outcome is so specific to the person. Satyagraha commonly is known as the political movement, but the literal translation is being steadfast and being anchored into our truth, and then simply being that in the world. And this is where, I opened this video with that sense of like Libra, intimate with our enemies. This is the difference in, instead of fighting and playing in the energy of the enemy, you stand in your center, you play in your creation energy completely. And then this person may come and try to push you, but it's like if we try and push over a tree, right? Like it's not going to move. There's a lovely, I think it's an Oscar Wilde quote around rooting yourself like a tree by the river of truth and telling the world, no, you move. Right? And again, I think these are similar energies that are coming forth, because when we think of harmony, it has to include the opposite. And in the energy of Libra, especially as the moon is now in its last phases, it's moving into Libra and the sun is now moving out of Pisces. We're going to go into springtime. We're going to go into Aries season. In this end cycle of what we've been exploring in formlessness, we now get to see who we are in opposition and who we are in acceptance, and like who we are in love and who we are in what is oppositional to love. And this is a massive aspect of Libra where you can take the polarity of friend and enemy and stand in your truth, collapse preferences, dissolve them, and then stand with ease in the harmony that you are, because you know both. You have friends, you have loved ones and intimates, and you also know the energy of the opposite, of the enemy in this case. And then you can use both of that, draw it in, and what it gives you is a 0 point, what is commonly called a 0 point, which is, now I am neither this nor this, so who am I? What am I creating? What am I creating that is also what we are creating? And this information comes to us not by sitting as quiet hermits in our house and in our room, but actually by relating to the world. And that is why Libra is a very relating sign, and the moon in Libra beckons us into relating to the world so that we can see more of us. I can see more of me when I behold you. You can see more of me when you can see more of yourself when you behold me. And so that's the energy. And this is the last video, as I mentioned, on our journey through the 12 signs as the sun was in Pisces. Thank you for coming with me on this lunar journey, and I will see you next week. And we're going to kickstart something shiny and new in Aries season. So I will see you there.